Yo! Welcome to another episode of Gaming with your boy, Mr. C. And guys, today we connect to the other side and our official review of the Xbox exclusive, The Medium. Gaming with Mr. C. Gaming with Mr. C. Alright guys, The Medium is a game brought to us by the Bloober team, who also did Blair Witch and Layers of Fear. This game takes place in two dimensions simultaneously. As the game unfolds, you take part of Marianne, who's dealing with the recent death of her adopted dad, when she gets a mysterious phone call bringing her to an abandoned town where she not only deals with her past, but her family's history as mediums. Alright guys, the story here is actually well crafted. It's, in my opinion, a phenomenal story. It's a little slow to get started, but once it gets started, it gets started. It's kind of like Usain Bolt. Well, I guess actually he was a sprinter. This is more of a... You get the picture. But once the story does get going, it's a good story. And kind of a staple now for the Bloober team. It's more of a psychological thriller horror game than it is a horror game. And trust me, I'm all about that. It kind of reminds me of the Blair Witch, but it takes it to another dimension. See what I did? Alright guys, the graphics. Again, we're going to have to kind of go back to their previous game, the Blair Witch, and where it had these moments of beauty, especially when it's daylight outside. There's actually that natural light. You can actually really see the beauty in these graphics. It's rare. And then there's these moments where you're examining things, you're zoomed in. Again, you can tell the details in the graphics. Or when you're actually in a with the graphics, is that when you're actually playing the game, outside of those rare moments, they seem low res. They seem overly mixed in post. They kind of seem stuttery. And guys, it's 2020. Why are we still relying on this gore, grotesque, animal skin type of vibe to say that, hey, this is a horror game? Like, yeah, I get it. Doom did that in the 80s, in the 90s, in the 2000s, 2010s, and 2020s. Can we move past it, maybe? On the other hand, the audio is well done, especially the score. And the way they use it to kind of bring you back and forth between dimensions, especially after these very tense moments where you're fighting your inner demons, and how the score kind of just opens it up and brings you back to reality. The voice acting is also incredible. Not to mention, this game does the best Hellblade, since Hellblade in my opinion, where you have these inner demons and thoughts and whispers, especially if you're using headphones. So Bloober team, job well done. Alright guys, on to the gameplay. The gameplay is like 9 different games in one. It's very strange. For instance, you kind of have like this 90s vibe of Resident Evil, where you're actually exploring, combining, and even examining objects. It actually even has those cool like cuts of the camera, like in the 90s Resident Evils, where you're behind the character, then you're maybe at a street light and you kind of see him walking. So that's kind of cool, but there's these other moments where you're in these two dimensions at the same time, whereas you might jump to this one to play at the same time this one's going on and you jump back. Or you might actually use a mirror to jump to this world or back to this world to kind of solve these puzzles. There's other moments where you're trying to get by this demon, if you will. And then you have this moment where you go into somebody's psyche and you're actually trying to unlock their inner demons to try to really destroy them. So here's the problem. That's the real charm of this game, is actually in the puzzles. For instance, there's this one puzzle where you have this dollhouse and you can take this little toy mirror and put it into different rooms of the house. And you can actually use the real mirror to jump to those parts of the houses in a time before the house burnt down. And that is sick as hell. Hey, let's try to sneak past this huge demon, which honestly to me could have been told through cutscenes or just not been there at all. Or you have these other moments where you're actually into somebody's psyche, and it just goes on too long. And there's like one too many of them. It kind of reminds me, again, of Blair Witch, where the game is great, and then the last 9 hours of the game is just in this one house, and you just repeat the same thing over and over again. Just like, sometimes less is more, Bloober. Sometimes less is more. Then you get to the controls where you do a few things wrong. First off, you have these kind of modernized tank controls, which is evident as soon as you take control over Marianne. Now, you do start to forget about it as the game goes on, but as soon as you forget about it, you're kind of into the psyche part, where you're into the people's head, and the walk speed is way too slow. But I will say this, some of the good notes about the controls is you have the two different dimensions, and they actually have 2 different interact buttons, which I thought was a small detail, but was very well appreciated, at least by me. Not only when you're in the 2 different worlds do they have an action button. If you happen to go to solely this world, that interaction button's still the same as it is when you have both of them. So this is always X and this is like always A. Small detail, but much appreciated. So guys, my final thoughts on this game. This game truly named itself after its performance. Medium. Why is this game an Xbox XS exclusive? It makes no sense to me. The story is the true hero here. The graphics aren't going to really sway you one way or the other, and the gameplay does have moments of pure bliss, but it also has moments of pure hell. And that's why I give this game a 6.5. So what do I mean by that? I think just from a pure technical standpoint, this game is no better than a 6.5. But when you kind of factor in the funness and the moments of pure bliss, and if you're really into like the Blair Witch and Resident Evil, those kind of games, those games really speak to you, I really do think that this game would be a 7.5 for you. As always, thanks for gaming with your boy, Mr. C.
Gaming with Mr. C. Gaming with Mr. C.